This podcast is a Uniting Heart and Soul production and was recorded on land that was stolen nearly 250 years ago. This particular episode was recorded on the land occupied by the Gadigal clan of the Eora Nation. We pay our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and we acknowledge that sovereignty over these lands was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. At Filthy Hope, we humbly contribute to the ancient and ongoing traditions of storytelling when we share stories on this podcast.
But yeah, that popped up again, and that's what we talked about after the interview, and I wonder if God's doing a thing. Ugh. Ugh.
What can you talk to, like, what I mean, I guess it's early days with that, but, like, do you have a sense of what that prompting is, or where it might be?
No, I don't even want it to be a prompt, so shut up, because...
Welcome back to Filthy Hope, a podcast that spends time in the grey spaces where Jesus, life and culture intersect. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. My name is Jonty, and as always, I'm joined by Ness.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm pumped about today.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are going to jump over to an interview very shortly with someone who we'll introduce when we get there. But maybe before we get there, why don't you paint a picture for us in terms of, like, who this person is, why we're talking to them, what the story is, where the connections are.
Such a powerhouse of a story, Jonty. I just don't know if it's justice. But her name is Gemma Sisia, and she is the director-founder of St. Jude's School in Tanzania. And our connection at Uniting Heart and Soul is that our church, for more than a decade, I believe it's close to 15 years, has been financially and prayerfully supporting this endeavour in Tanzania. Gemma's an Aussie chick who had this dream of setting up a school and to combat poverty in Tanzania. She'll talk more about her story in the podcast, so I don't want to give any of that away. So that's our connection, and we've just been financially supporting and prayerfully supporting. And I came into the picture, as did you, 2.5 years ago when we joined Uniting Heart and Soul. And it's a part of our adopted portfolio of mission.
Kind of like a legacy
thing. Yeah, it's a legacy mission. It really is. And so we had an opportunity recently when Gemma was coming back to Australia with Enoch and Maddie, the author of their new book that we'll talk about in the pod. And they came into church one Sunday, only a few weeks back, and actually told us about the story. And it came alive. Enoch's a graduate of that school since he was a little boy, and he's gone on to uni, but she'll unpack that in the pod. And it's just such a success story, Jonty. It kind of lit my fire for that mission. And while I've been really supportive of funding this and continuing to do this legacy mission as a part of the Heart and Soul branding and what we do, to actually, I feel like I'm now weaved into it. I've got, like, I'm invested in this.
You've got
part
stakes in it.
Yeah, and it's a part of our investment portfolio for the kingdom of Christ. That sounded clever, didn't it? But it kind of is like because we've got some bricks and mortar, we do some hands and feet in the community, and this is like a hands and feet globally, overseas, And to actually meet and touch and feel and meet these people was just like kick-ass, Jonty, but she's just such a laid-back, cool chick, and I'm sort of fangirling her in a way because she's a bit of like an angel who's so humble, and she just humbly does what she does and impacts the world in such a powerful way. Yeah, so it's a good interview.
Yeah. And I guess we were talking after spoilers, we've already recorded that interview. You'll hear it shortly. But you were talking after we finished talking to Gemma about how that lit a real spark for you, that experience of talking to them face to face. Yeah. Could you unpack what that was like?
Look, I had since I was a Christian, young, sort of in my 20s, I had this vision that, I know this is going to sound so random and weird, that I would be inoculating babies. And they're little dark-skinned babies. They were specific, God showed me in this picture. I thought, there's no way I'm going to ever inoculate a baby. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. They don't have hairdryers in those parts of the world. How on earth am I going to go and do something like that? And I thought that maybe one day, I don't know, maybe somebody can teach me how to do an injection in a thigh or an arm or whatever. But that popped up again, and that's what we talked about after the interview. And I wonder if God's doing a thing.
What can you talk to, like, what I mean, I guess it's early days with that, but like, do you have a sense of what that prompting is, or where it might be?
No, I don't even want it to be a prompt, so shut up, because but I know what the image is. Like, God gives it to me in reels. Yeah. So the original reel is the same reel. It's like watching the opening scene of a movie that you love a lot.
Sure.
So I've seen the opening credit of what this looks like, and I can see I've got a mother and a little precious little baby, and I'm jabbing them. Yeah, and there's a queue up. Yeah, it's weird.
We might jump over to the interview now. Then,
yeah.
So we will see you soon after this interview with Gemma.
Welcome, Gemma, to the podcast. We are so excited to have you today in the middle of your incredible book launch and tour in Australia. I've had the privilege of having you come and present at Woollahra at Uniting Heart and Soul with you and Maddie and Enoch, and it was just such a blessing to our community to hear about the most incredible work that you're doing at St. Jude's in Tanzania. So welcome, my friend. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very humbled to be on your show.
Oh, it's wonderful. Gemma, before I get started, I just wanted to, and we'll put all of this information in our show notes. My whiz, Jonty, our pastor of all things creative and podcast, will make sure that happens. But I just wanted to show, if anybody that is watching our podcast on YouTube, they'll see the title and the cover of the book that we'll be talking about, The School That Hope Built by Madeline Kelly. And it is an absolute powerhouse of a book. And I know that you've been promoting that on your Australian tour over the last coming weeks. Gemma, I'm just wanting to say congratulations on the book launch. We saw you, many of your friends here at Uniting Heart and Soul saw you on Sunrise. It was an incredible interview. You just absolutely smashed it out of the ballpark. And I just wanted to hand over to you. Can you share with our listeners about your story and how this most incredible mission of God took hold in the most extraordinary way? Do you know, Gemma, I've just actually come from teaching SRE at the local primary school, and I was actually teaching about Noah's Ark. And we all know the story of Noah's Ark. He builds a big boat. And I think your story is a real Noah's Ark story. You've just listened, you've obeyed, and you've just surrounded yourself with faithful people and done the most incredible I believe the work of God in Tanzania. So can you share with our listeners about what you've done, how you've done, the trials and tribulations and the success stories?
Okay. So I grew up on a sheep farm in northern New South Wales, about 80 kilometres north of Armidale. I grew up with 7 very wild brothers. I think that taught me a lot of survival skills pretty much from birth. But after I finished university, or when I was at university, I met a wonderful nun who was running a school in East Africa, and she was after math science teachers. So I told her that after I finish uni, I'll go over and help her for a few years. That was in the mid-90s. Now, you probably remember in the mid-90s, that was pre, all the wonderful medicine for HIV and AIDS. And Uganda was in the media quite a lot for having been hit hard with the AIDS crisis when it was there. And so the school where I was working was a lovely private school, but many of the students in my classes were having to leave because their parents were passing away and they were unable to pay for the school fees. I was young. When you're under 25, you're very idealistic. You can save the world. But in actual fact, you have no idea what you're talking about. So I thought it'd be lovely to build a good private school, but a private school that doesn't charge school fees, so kids don't have to leave if their parents pass away. So I went back to Australia, told mum and dad and all my brothers that I'm going to build a free private school in Africa, and you can imagine how that went down. But one of my friends that I went to school with, Agnes Henner, gave me my first donation, said, go for it, Gem, and she gave me $10. I took the $10 down to the Commonwealth Bank in the Armidale Mall and opened a bank account. And then I started talking in different churches and schools around Inverell, Armidale, Tamworth. My father introduced me to our local Rotary Club, and I started making presentations to Rotary as well. After, I can't remember, maybe 6 months, we had raised enough money for the first classrooms. And then a wonderful group of Rotary in Armidale and non-Rotarians said that they would be happy to build the first classrooms with the money that we had raised. So finally, the school opened in 2002. So we're just over 20 years old. We had our 20th birthday last year. So we opened the school in 2002 with a huge number of students, 3. So we had 3 kids on our first day of school. And since then, it's just been, a lot of faith, a lot of hard work. Did I say hard work? A lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Not giving up, and a lot of hard work. Yeah. And so we started the school 20 years ago with 3 students. Now, because of great people like you are behind us, we've now grown that to 3 schools. So 3 students to 3 schools. We have about 350 staff on the payroll. We have close to 400 students at university that we also support. And an annual budget, a bit over $8 million US, that we have to fundraise each year, which all goes into the community. So there's a lot of people in our districts that live off our annual budget.
Gemma, it's extraordinary. And I remember you telling us that was it 1,800 students, 800 are day students, and then 1,000 actually live in, that you're feeding, clothing, educating every single day?
Yeah, so we have 1,400 in boarding, girls and boys, and they get 3 meals a day. They get everything from their uniforms and stationery to textbooks, excursions, transport, everything that they need to have a good education.
Yeah, medical care, the whole thing. You become a family for them, don't you?
Yes, well, a lot of them, they've lost a parent. On average, sadly, 3 of our kids lose a parent every month for various reasons. But it's wonderful because they don't have to leave the school because they're all on scholarship. Yeah. So 100% of students, even though we are a private school, we don't charge school fees. 100% of our students are on scholarships.
Can you share a little bit about that scholarship process and the guidelines to actually gain a scholarship? Because as a previous school chaplain of MLC school at Burwood in Sydney, very fancy, magnificent school, and Jonty was a private schoolboy as well at Knox in Wahroonga, 2 great Uniting Church schools. The process is really different of actually gaining a scholarship. Can you share about your scholarship process?
Okay, so St. Jude. So by the way, I should tell you why I called the school St. Jude. So St. Jude is known as the patron saint of the hopeless cases. So trying to start a school with $10, having never built anything in my life except for a guinea pig's cage when I was in year 9. That's why I called the school St. Jude, because the scholarship process, well, a few years ago, St. Jude's got #1 in the country for advanced maths. So we are a private school. There are many private schools in Tanzania that charge school fees, very similar to MLC, very similar to Knox. But St. Jude's is the only private school where 100% of the students are on scholarships. If parents have a little bit of money, they have countless options of private schools where they can pay school fees to send their children to. But if you are poor, you don't have any options of private schools. And so to get a scholarship at St. Jude's, because, academically we're, right up the top, thankfully, a lot of people want to come to our school. So, for example, we had 170 scholarships available for the beginning of secondary school this year, and we had over 4,000 kids apply for those scholarships. So what do we do? So we have 3 scholarship opportunities at the beginning of primary school. If you're not successful, then you can have another go at the beginning of secondary, and the final chance is year 11. So there's 3 entry points. Basically, what we do is we advertise, and then many, many children come to the gate. We line them up, and then they do a series of entrance exams. So our mission is to find bright public school students who would never have the means to go to a private school, and they have to pass our entrance exams, and then they have to pass a poverty check. So they come in, and then they do a series of entrance exams. And then if they pass the entrance exams, then we look at their background. So we look at their birth certificates or, hospital delivery notes to see if they are age appropriate. So, for example, if it's entry into primary school, into grade 1, are they 6, 7 years old, or are they 16 years old pretending that they're 6 years old? Are they coming from a public school, or are they secretly a private school student? And that's why they pass the entrance exams. If they pass the document check, then we go to their home. So teams of staff will go to their home a few times when they don't know when we're coming, just to make sure that the family are poor enough. So, for example, if the family is found to have electricity, they may be considered too wealthy for the program. If they have more than 2 rooms in their house, they could be considered too wealthy for the program. Glass in their windows, anything other than a basic dirt cement floor, in-house plumbing, definitely. So most of our families would live in a 1 or a 2 bedroom little home. They would be sharing a toilet or drop hole toilet with maybe 5 or 6 other families outside. The closest water supply, they would take their bucket, go and fill up the water. That's a typical home that our families who pass the poverty test would have.
It's a very different...
So once the child...
Sorry,
yes.
Gemma,
So once the child passes the entrance exams, the poverty checks, we verify that they are in fact a public school student. Then we give them a uniform, and then we send them out to their parents, who are obviously overwhelmed that their child is being formally enrolled in the school. And then we come out to Australia and try and get all their scholarships sponsored. That's what we do. So that's why we're in Australia at the moment for the month.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think for our listeners, it's a very different paradigm, isn't it, Jonty? It's extraordinarily different. I just know that the scholarship process for MLC doesn't work on poverty check. It's actually the reverse, quite frankly. It's scholastically based, or a skill set that's extraordinary to gain a scholarship to the school. I just think you're doing such incredible work in the name of God with the poorest of poor people.
Hey everyone, just interrupting this episode to talk to you about our live events. If you're a fan of this show and you want to come and hang out with myself and Ness, as well as be in the live audience for a taping of the podcast, then you should definitely look at coming along to one of our live events. These events are totally free, and as well as the podcast, there's live music and food and drink, as well as just a really great opportunity to hang out with and share stories with all sorts of different people. If you're interested, there's a link to our Eventbrite profile down below where you can see all of the upcoming events and book your spot to make sure that you don't miss out. That's all, and now back to the episode.
You were sharing with us when you came to visit us about beautiful Enoch, who came and shared his story of hope. Could you share a little bit about him? Because the book is full. I'm going to do another sneaky grab here if you're watching. The book, The School That Hope Built, by Madeline Kelly, actually has these great images of Enoch as a little boy coming to the school, like it might be one of his first days with his dad. And then as a graduate, but not just a graduate of your school, it went a step further. Can you share a little bit about his story?
Yes, okay. Well, today, while I'm talking to you, he is actually at Lone Pine in Brisbane here, getting a koala cuddle. So I'm excited to see him in about an hour's time to see if he was able to cruise and and have a cuddle with a koala. So Enoch, and so when I started the school back in 2002, remember I started the school with 3 children?
Yep.
Enoch was one of those 3 kids, but he was a part of that class. Now that class finally reached year 12 in 2015. Thankfully, there were more than 3 of them by the time they eventually got to year 12. There was about 60 of them in that class, and Enoch was one of the 60. So after our students finish year 12, they do a community service. Yeah, it's an optional program because you can't force, of course, somebody to do community service, but close to 100% of students always apply to do it anyway. So it's an optional year after year 12 and before starting university. It's a little bit like a gap year where they use the skills that they were lucky enough to attain thanks to their scholarship to benefit their community. The majority of the students go and work in government schools as teachers, not tutors or assistant teachers, as teachers, because our secondary public schools don't have enough teachers there in them. So, for example, Enoch's class finished year 12 in 2015. They went and did their community service here. To give you some stats, the students who finished year 12 last year are currently working in 41 secondary schools, teaching between them over 13,000 students. Mm. After that community service here, they go off to university. Enoch was lucky. He worked really hard and applied for many international scholarships. He was given a full scholarship to a university in New York in America. He did financial economics and statistics or something. Anyway, a course that I couldn't do. So he did that for 4 years. And then in May 2021, he graduated from university. Within a week, he was on a plane back to Tanzania. And it's amazing because Enoch could actually be employed by any big corporate now with his great education in Tanzania and his English. But, he's chosen to come and work at St. Jude's to help me. So it's funny, 20 years ago, he was a recipient of our charity. Now we're a recipient of his charity. So he works at St. Jude's and he basically helps up and coming year 11 and 12s to get international scholarships like he was given. So that's Enoch. All of Enoch's parents, the same as all the parents at St. Jude's, they only had a primary education because in Tanzania we have over 19,000 primary schools. We have a population of around 60 million. 19,000 primary schools, but only 900 high schools. Yeah, so not many people get to high school. So his family, his parents both didn't go to secondary school, but that's normal. However, at the beginning of this year, Enoch's father had his birthday and he gave him the most beautiful gift. The gift, I'll have to show you the photo. Enoch showed me a few days ago. We took him for a frozen yogurt experience at Yochi. Now we've got to find Yochis all over the place. He just loves them. And so we're in Yochi. He was telling me that it was his dad's birthday and they gave him a gift, and it was a framed picture of the 4 eldest children in their tertiary gowns. I'll put it on the chat and I'll send it to you. And I said to him, how is that possible? Because your father and your mum only had a primary education. St. Jude's has a 1-child per family policy because there's so much demand. So how, given that you're the only one that St. Jude's helped, how did your other siblings get a tertiary education? So he was explaining to me that his elder sister got to secondary but failed her national exams, which is pretty normal because it's very cutthroat. Remember, there's only about 900 high schools in the country. So there's kids in 19,000 primary schools that have to be culled 2,900 secondary schools. So she failed her secondary national exams. Meanwhile, the second child, Enoch, is moving up through secondary, and finally he gets into year 11. Whilst he's doing year 11, he does economics, geography, and advanced maths. He then, during the school holidays, teaches his big sister, geography, etc. She then decides to resit her high school exams, and she passes.
Oh, gosh.
So they were basically doing exams together. So she passes. He then gets a scholarship to America. He gets 3 part-time jobs and studies at night. So he does 3 jobs, and then he does his subjects in the evening, sends the money home, helps his little sister, who is now a geography teacher in a school in Tanzania. While he's in America, his little brother also gets through university. He pays for him to go through university by sending money home from America. And then just this year, his other little sister has just gotten through law.
Oh, my God.
So I was joking and I said, oh, Enoch, I said, what are you going to do with the 3 littlest? Because there's 7 children. So what about the 3 little ones? There's 1 in primary and there's a couple in secondary. And he goes, no, that's not my job. I've delegated the payment of their school fees to my little brothers and sisters who've now, got a tertiary education. So Enoch said he's not paying for the final 3. His younger brothers and sisters. Yes. And it's just the power of helping one, it's that ripple effect that when I started St. Jude's, I didn't even think was going to, that wasn't even a part of my plan.
Yeah.
But that just gives an example of the ripple effect.
Oh, it's beyond, the stories are just extraordinary. And from having met you, you just can roll story after story of magnificent successes. And it's just so uplifting to hear a story of hope like this in our world today, and particularly from the position of wealth and opulence that we live in Australia. It's just an extraordinary thing. I'm just fangirling you big time, sister, and just blown away by your life's work. It's really extraordinary. What can we do in Australia?
You'll have to visit us sometime.
Pardon? Visit you?
I said you'll have to come and visit us. Our secondary school is only 20 minutes drive from Mount Kilimanjaro International Airport. So you've got no excuses.
Yeah, exactly. There's a mission trip, Jonty. Maybe we need to. I just think, Gemma, what is it that Australia can do to help this mission that you're doing in Tanzania? What do you need from Australians to help support? What are the options for us to be able to help you continue another 20 years of work?
So in the end, it's very not very attractive. In the end, we just need money. So, for example, Enoch's class, 60 who graduated in year 12, we are currently supporting around 400 students at university. Of the 60 students in Enoch's year who graduated in 2015, my original year 12s, 10 of them are now practicing doctors. So 10 of the 60 are now in hospitals. A couple of weeks ago, my mother-in-law, just before I got on a plane, had an asthma attack and I had to take her to the hospital in town. And who's the emergency doctor on call? It's Dr. Hosiana, one of Enoch's classmates. So I just want to get more and more kids to their final destination, whether it's a builder, a nurse, a teacher, an architect, a doctor, an engineer. I just want to help the kids get to the end. And so each year, we have around 250 students on scholarship, new students that enroll either at the beginning of primary, at the beginning of secondary, or in year 11.
Yep.
And so really what I need from Australia, if they're willing, is to help cover the cost of a scholarship of one of our students. Now, we have scholarship programs. So to be the only sponsor of a student scholarship, it's about a little bit less than $3,000 a year. Then we have a half scholarship program where we have 2 people sponsoring a scholarship, half. So if people can't afford the almost $3,000 a year, then they can do the half option, and then we will find somebody else to pay for the other half of that student scholarship. So, for example, Enoch had 2 sponsors, one from country New South Wales and one from Ireland, and they are the people who paid for him to go all the way through. And then if people can't afford that, well, just joining our social media account and helping to spread the word like you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, using their resources that they have. You know, you had access to a podcast and you invited me to be on a podcast. That is a huge way of helping the school by spreading the word of mouth. So thanks to you, you know, offering to have me ask how many more people may learn about the school St Jude, thanks to you.
We need to do a shout out to Sydney Uni, Macquarie Uni, Charles Sturt University, Armidale University, all the big unis, New South Wales Uni, to sponsor these kids. Because I felt really embarrassed that none of the Australian unis are sponsoring your children when they get to tertiary education. And I think that sucks, Gemma. I think that's not good enough. And I'm shouting out to anybody in podcast land who has access to people in high places in the university sector in Australia to support these young, phenomenal, intelligent children that are coming out of your school at St Jude's for this next section of their life, so that they can come back to Tanzania. And as you rightly said, it changes the poverty cycle, doesn't it, within your country? And you were telling me, Gemma, about how your school actually supports all the work in the area from, can you unpack that a little bit for us? In terms of how you have all the uniforms made and all the food is prepared?
Yeah, so we have people in our area that are just pedaling away every single day on their sing and pedal machines, making all the hundreds and hundreds of uniforms for the kids to wear, because our students have day uniforms, boarding uniforms, PE uniforms, sport uniforms. And then we have lots and lots of local families who contribute tomatoes and onions and cucumbers and goats and cows that go into the 1 million hot meals that the school provides each year. We have something like, it's like 2,000 rooms across all the boarding houses and classrooms across the schools. All of those buildings have to be maintained. So we are a very big buyer of hardware shop materials and building materials, maintenance. All the plumbing and all the toilets have to be maintained. We are the largest buyer of internet in our region. And so there are a lot of people in our local community that not only rely on a job at the school, there's about 350 staff, but, you know, supplying food, materials, textbooks, stationery, tires, engines, laptops, chairs, desks, everything that one needs for a school.
It's extraordinary. It's like its own little ecosystem, isn't it? Everybody's supporting everybody, and it's just
it's
phenomenal. Yeah. I'm just blown away. I'm just so thankful for you, Gemma, and your team at St Jude's. I just think you're one of those special humans in the world. You're like an angel that just appeared and God used you in a really mighty and powerful way. And I'm just so grateful that you do what you do. I couldn't do what you do. And I just think you are extraordinary. And so another way that people can support the school is by purchasing the book. And we'll have all the details in our show notes at the end, and contact details for you also, Gemma, if they want to reach out and support you and connect with you for marketing purposes or support purposes or financial help. We'll have all those details down below in the podcast so they can find you without a shadow of a doubt, sister.
Thanks. No, your church has been helping us for over a decade there at Wallara, you know, and so because we've got good people behind us like you and everyone at your church, it gives us the courage to keep expanding or growing or taking more children on. So 3 years ago, we started the secondary school. It now has 600 boarders in there. We wouldn't have even gone near that expansion if we didn't know that we had the backing of people like you through thick and thin. And so we've all got a job to do. I can't raise the schools, but I can't raise the money. So thank you for having our back.
It's and just a quick shout out, had nothing to do with me. I came into this church. Jonty and I have only been here for 2.5 years. This was the work of the minister Brian Jago and the minister before him and the faithful community of Wallara Double Bay community. I've just come in and stepped in and I'm just doing the next piece of the God puzzle. That's all. Just doing the thread of hands and feet of Christ into your community, and we're just so grateful for the partnership, Gemma.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure. Have the most amazing day. And if you get a photo of Enoch cuddling a koala, can you please pop it to us, and we will pop it in the show notes, because I think that's fantastic. And Jonty might use it as one of the advertising photos that we use.
Well, I'm going to find it now. He's not back yet. He's still probably having seeing a kangaroos as we speak. But I'm going to find the photo, because I took a photo of his phone when he showed me the photo of his father. You know, the gift framed picture of the 4 eldest children with their tertiary gowns. So I'm going to find that now and email it to you.
That is extraordinary. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for just being you, and go well with the remainder of your tour, Gemma.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. That was our interview with Gemma.
Whoa, she's inspirational, isn't she?
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah, and she's so calm and laid back, and she's so calm and chill, and so not a wanker. That's what I love. She's just, for somebody that's done so much for the kingdom of God, I just think, wow, I'd be so up myself, Jonty. That's why God doesn't send me
it's a
over
real
there.
thing, and we don't like to admit it, but like it's a kind of inbuilt human thing where we like to be recognized for things that we do.
Yeah.
And when you meet people like Gemma, where there's just no element of requesting or requiring that, it's refreshing. It's really inspiring, I think.
Yeah, so. And they just need money, and it'd be so amazing if our Australian universities got behind this, Jonty, because this is an Australian woman who's gone and set this up in Tanzania, and she's doing incredible things. And if the US unis are getting behind her, why the heck aren't our Australian unis jumping in and sponsoring, new young doctors or dentists or, nurses or teachers or engineers or whatever to come and be educated in our universities over here? That would just be phenomenally generous.
And we touched on this in the interview. It's one of those things that it just pays forward exponentially.
Yeah.
It's a benefit. It's a net benefit to everybody.
Yes.
In those
it's
more and more people getting educated, more and more people going through into highly specialized jobs that then pay forward and help more and more and more people. And it's just, I think you use the phrase, it ends that cycle of poverty.
It combats poverty.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's the hope of the future for them. And it's so exciting. So I would just love for some university to hear this and want to sponsor some fresh grads out of their, HSC program and get those kids into our unis over here. What a beautiful story that would be. Be
Absolutely.
Like a full cycle, wouldn't it, Jonty?
Oh, and if anyone's listening and they feel like that's something like you're feeling prompted to look into that, we'll have links down below if you want to have a look at how you can be involved in
and sponsor
donating money to that cause.
Yeah, so cool. And the beautiful thing about it is that Gemma encourages people that do sponsorship to go over and stay and be there and meet the people.
Right.
I have sponsored so many Christian Children Fund kids over the years, and you don't get to go and visit them or meet them ever.
Yeah.
And this is pretty cool. It's pretty unique, in
you
fact.
The opportunity to go and hang out with the person that you paid for their tertiary education is so pretty cool. Unreal. So
yeah, it's just amazing, and to be in the space with them there, amazing.
Yeah, unreal.
It's a good one.
Yeah, so if you're feeling prompted to do that, there'll be information for that down below. Again, we say this every week, but if you want to get in touch with us, please do. You can contact us on socials, or you can email us. The email address is filthyhopepod@gmail.com. And we have a message here that I just thought I'd read out and give a shout out on the show.
Sure.
This is, I'll just use their first name, Jen. G'day, Jen. How you going?
Hi, Jen.
She's a bit cheeky. Hello, Pastor Jonty. As it is Pride Month, I have been struggling with a lot of my fellow cult members in Wagga. She's a recent Christian convert and is living in Wagga, going to church. So she says, I've been struggling with a lot of my fellow cult members in Wagga. Do you have any scripture-based resources that I can give them to encourage them to stop being bigots and make me want to gouge my eyes out? I'm creating a, quote, let's not be haters kit. So looking for some things. Have already got your podcast on the list. So thanks, Jen.
Oh, I love that.
So, I mean, maybe over the next few weeks we could have a think about some resources, some scripture-based resources on...
how not to be a fuckwit. We could.
That's right.
Yeah, what is she called? What's Jen calling the kit?
Let's not be haters kit. So
I've got another title for that.
We'll workshop the title. Yeah, but I mean, even just on this podcast, we have a couple of episodes with, and we had an episode with the Rev James Aaron, which was fantastic, which we've got, by the time this comes out, I don't know what order these are coming out in, but we may or may not have 1 or 2 episodes with Reverend Ben Gilmore.
Oh, that's a ripper.
His story is fantastic. And we had another episode early days where we had a look at some scripture and looked at both sides of the homosexual same-sex marriage debate. But yeah, maybe next week or in future episodes we can dig deeper into that a little bit and find some really interesting resources. So thanks, Jen. We'll keep pulling on that thread and see what we come up with.
And let us know what you put in your kit, babe.
If we can contribute to the kit, that'd be great.
Yes.
So again, if you want to get in touch, please do. We love receiving your messages. We've had lots of really positive feedback from you regarding our episode with Sarah from a couple of weeks ago. I'm glad you guys really enjoyed it. We loved having that conversation. It was a bit of a different conversation for us. So
it was
nice.
I love a trauma theme. And she touched on it. She's offered to come back and do a part B and to go a bit deeper. So that's going to be an interesting one as well because I know the depth of her story.
Absolutely.
And
we kind of just scratched the surface, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Absolutely. Yeah. I had a shout out from a terrific man, Isaac. I'll just call him Isaac, who's reached out to the pod. And he said the most beautiful thing. He said, "Hi, Vanessa, it's Isaac here. I just want to tell you that I often listen to your online podcast, Filthy Hope. Very encouraging and moving indeed. Keep the good work going. Bless your ministry and the work of your hand, Rev Sister. Love your vibe. Blessing and peace." Oh, and I said, "Brother, you want to come to the next live event?"
Come to the next live event.
Yeah, come on, Isaac.
Again, information will be down below if you want to come hang out with us live.
Yeah, super cool.
You can watch us record a podcast and then you can have a drink with us afterwards.
Yeah, have cheese, mate.
Yeah,
cheese.
Come hang out. We'd love to do
all
that.
sorts. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you got them here still?
I've got them here, yeah, definitely. They're on my side of Gator,
That's
brother.
right, yeah.
He's
Gators
protecting my
guarding the
stash.
licorice, all sorts, yeah. Well, thanks for listening. We've whatever you're doing today, whether you're listening to us while you're doing your shop, I don't know, how do you listen to podcasts?
In the car.
In the car, yeah. So if you're driving, if you're shopping, if you're...
Don't go through the roundabout.
Whatever you're doing,
right.
Thank you for spending your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, super fun.
Yeah, get in touch, filthyhopepod@gmail.com. Thanks to Gemma for joining us today. That was
beautiful,
incredible. More information for all that stuff down below as well. So yeah, we'll catch you next week. This is Filthy Hope. I'm Jonty.
I'm Ness.
See you next week.
This is a prayer for the people who want to give up, who have been hurt beyond repair and cannot bear to see your face in anything. Find peace in letting go of the guilt that isn't yours, and find hope in understanding life is not a game.